I cannot do that. Stand down or die. I cannot do that. I cannot do that. Yeah. Stand down or die.
Hello, and welcome to the Multistrike Forge Card Guide. A lot of people have been asking me about this one. Is Turbo Multistrike coming back? And the answer is like, kind of. Instead of being like a speedy machine that just like dashes all around with volatile reversal and launch and all these things, we are instead making an absolutely crazy juggernaut thanks to the new passive tree on Forge Guard. That is Forge Master's Might, that allow us to have a two-handed while using a shield. Again, this is not an agile build, this is a juggernaut. This build, you can go extremely tanky because it gets a lot of damage for kind of free, a lot of crit multi and stuff, just from the bases it uses and stuff. And with good gear, you can get like more than, you know, maybe like 7k life or something like that, like in aspirational gear. And with endgame gear, you're gonna have at least 5,000. So really tanky, you know, full block, like full armor, lots of recovery, ring of shields. Yeah, you're gonna be really tanky on this one, but compared to something like a judgment build or something, your early game is gonna be a bit more scuffed because you're gonna need crit chance, you're gonna need good gear in order to actually do good damage. The build has around 6 million DPS with this setup. You can definitely make it do more DPS if you completely neglect all tankiness. But then, at that point, why don't you just play Rife or a Warpath or a Racing Strike or something like that? So the reason I went for a tanky setup is to actually give it a reason to be played, because those other setups can get as tanky as this. So again, what is your choice? Do you want super DPS of Void Knight, or do you want to be a rock, you know? If you want to be a rock, this one is for you, okay? Let's talk a bit about it. The most notable change for this to be viable is the Bladestorm node. Basically how this works is that now Multistrike can hit the same target with all the additional swords, but it will consume mana. This is very important to understand, because you're gonna see that there's extra swords that you could grab, you could go Void Knight, you could do a lot of things. The more swords you have and the more procs you have, the more mana you consume. So you kind of want to find an equilibrium to generate enough mana that you're not over consuming, especially because you are gonna be casting some abilities that cost some mana, like Ring of Shields and Shield Throw, etc. Right? Okay. Actually, Shield Throw you reduce the cost a lot, but early on and stuff, you know, it costs a bit of mana. Again, let's get into it. Again, a lot of legendaries again for this build, making use of Mantle of the Ox, very cool item. Remember, you're gonna be having your uniques around, so really cool. Let's get into it. Easy to play, very good lifesteal, crazy tankiness, but you know, you're a crit spear build, so you know, on the slow side, but you're gonna be able to just, whenever you hit your gear, you just sit on top of bosses and you don't care. Multistrike, classic setup. We go for the spear. The reason we go for the spear is because we get flat crit from the passive tree, and we also get a bunch of good multipliers, and there's good basis for it. Spear node makes it so you can't only like shotgun with Blade Storm, but you can also pierce 2 enemies behind the enemy getting hit by the Blade Storm. So again, you get a lot of AoE with this, a lot of porcupine effect, and it's really good. Eventually you go for the bleed nodes when you have a nuker, and you have a bunch of multipliers. You know, every multi-strike on my setup in endgame gear hits the dummy for 500,000, right? So, and you're hitting like 5 times per second or 4 times per second per attack, sorry. So, and you attack many times per second, so you can do the math, okay? Ring of Shields, classic setup, super tanky. Again, if you need more points to get the full block, you put points here instead of this, right? You just max this, but eventually you are not gonna need, because you have so much block in the build anyway. For sigils, again, great quality of life, and one of the reasons this build doesn't suck to be geared, the crit chance from sigils, really nice, right? Because you get the increased crit chance from here, you get the flat crit from there, you know, you get the increased crit also from here, and with that you're basically starting to have a playable character. Healing Hands, again, it procs, it's a dash, just like we explained on the shield rush build. The fact that you can heal an ally, aka your shields with this node, makes it so the cooldown can be lowered by you healing your own shields, and this makes the build actually quite you know, smooth to play, considering, you know, it's a melee build that has no access to haste because of Forge Master's Might. And again, Volatile Reversal doesn't really provide anything for us in this build. And even though I don't really like to use this build to make this ability mechanically, Shield Throw, you can't really deny the buffs it provides. It's gonna be on a 6-second cooldown, and for 4 seconds, it's basically gonna give you Frenzy, and it's also gonna give you a bunch of physical penetration and armor. You don't really care about the armor that much, but the pen is really noticeable. Again, it's 40% penetration on a 6-second cooldown with a 4-second uptime. Again, you use this whenever there's like you start hitting a boss, and then, you know, you throw this, it bounces, and then you get the buff, so you can do extra damage. Again, there's not really an alternative that feels good on the mana side. I tested a bunch of things like Abyssal Echoes and things like that, but it's just like this is quite mana heavy sometimes, so I don't know. I like this. It's hard to ignore. It gives so much damage. Again, for the passive tree, remembering you that this gives you frailty, and it gives you reduced damage taken from blocks and the strength. You get the benefit of everything because you have both a shield and a two-handed weapon, thanks to Forge Master's Might. So again, once you equip this, remember that you won't need the frailty on idols or on gear or anything like that. So really nice. Again, once you have 50% block, this node gets even more strong. And yeah, the classic points. A lot of people are gonna wonder why Hammer and Anvil. The reason you want to go Hammer and Anvil is because it's kind of hard to give up slots to get the armor shred you need, and with this you just solve it. You don't have to worry about it on gear, you don't have to worry about high rolling and stuff, and you can just focus on building tankiness on your gear. For skills, you know, activate Ring of Shields for the tankiness, multi-strike like a monkey, you know, just hold left click, and yeah, and then Shield Throw for buffs and Healing Hands for moving, and that's it. You know, it's very simple to play. And again, for the gear, Plague Dragger's Tongue with the LP changes. Basically, look at the stats this thing gives, right? It's a spear, so we're gonna get all the benefits from using a spear. Then you're gonna have almost like 200 flat damage, 50% attack speed, 6% melee crit chance. It's very important that you re-roll the item so that crit is as high as possible. And and it's not even that high LP, so having a 2 LP, a 3 LP, it's actually really doable and really possible, especially in COF. Like 2 LP is basically guaranteed, right? If you play enough. So yeah, it's gonna be hard to beat this with any weapon. And again, this is what I mentioned, like where would you fit Armor Shred in here, right? Because you don't want to be giving up your crit multi, like you don't want to be giving up on your health here and stuff. So yeah, Falcon Fist, a very good option early on, because again, a lot of flat attack speed, pretty much, that just comes with the implicit. But eventually you want to go for Immortal Wise if you manage to get them, of course, because these drop from Uber Avaroth. Again, this build doesn't build enough attributes, and it's a melee build, so red rings are not really an option, but you don't need them because you're so tanky with Pale and with Apocalypse and everything. Apocalypse is the best option to cap crit, to cap block, sorry, because it also gives us crit multiplier. And again, just a classic setup for damage, midnight for the movement speed, because otherwise, again, this build doesn't have haste. So if you don't use Flames of Midnight and you don't use like fast boots like Soul Run or something like that, it does feel pretty bad. And again, you're gonna have so much armor. That is one of the few builds where we actually go for the Fizz Blessing, just so we can counter the Soul Run downside. Again, the build has like 600 crit multi or something, because you just get so much crit multi everywhere and so much damage. It's pretty good, you know. And again, it's a physical build, so just kill all the physical stuff. Make sure you have the Doom combo, right, with Siphon of Anguish and Shattered Chains, and, you know, Mantle of the Ox, Immortal Vice. There's a lot of options to get tank here, but this is just like a straight up tank, you know. You go in, bong bong bong, and GG. Again, I hope you guys like the build. There is definitely stronger things in Sentinel, but I still wanted to give my take. A lot of people are gonna ask me, but what about Smite Multistrike, and what about Electrify Multistrike and stuff? Those are gonna be better early on, because dots obviously are super strong early on. But I've tested, and this eventually just becomes tankier and does more damage. So again, you still can play the dot versions with no issues. But if you're wondering why we're not covering that, it's because this build is slightly better. So our new policy is that if there's like two versions of the same skill that basically play the same, we're gonna go for the damage type variant that is actually superior to not bait people, okay? So again, I hope you guys like it. I'll see ya, and bye-bye.
Enough of this, Harbingers. Entertain my dear sister for a moment.
Traveler, don't worry about me.
Such wasted potential. Orobis would have welcomed you.
Ha!
You fight for nothing!
I cannot do that.
See the beauty we were denied. Terror turned her back on us. Darkness reigns. The void hunger. The gods tore our world apart. They deserve their fate. We can learn that.
I cannot do that.
We treated the world no better. Death is our legacy. Die! The world called to Orobis. This is his answer. The void comes. Hope will not save you. What? No!
I cannot do that.
Corruption! The void cleanses all! You cannot hurt me! Break before me! You cannot hurt me! I have undone